Collecting taxes and fees is a fundamental way for countries to generate public revenues that make it possible to finance investments in human capital, infrastructure, and the provision of services for citizens and businesses. But what's happening in the Senate right now really does deserve Trumpian superlatives. The bill Republican leaders are trying to ram through this week without hearings, without time for even a basic analysis of its likely economic impact, is the biggest tax scam in history. It's such a big scam that it's not even clear who's being scammed: middle-class taxpayers, people who care about budget deficits, or both. So in this video, we are going to discuss tax is the biggest scam in the history. The video is going to be amazing. Make sure to stick till the end. Now before we get into this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below saying I subscribed. I will try my best to reply to as many comments as possible. Preliminary analyses estimate the financing gap for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals for developing countries at about $2.5 trillion annually. Much of this financing gap will need to be met by increased private sector investment in sustainability, which requires appropriate tax policies to create the needed price incentives. Yet, developing countries that are most in need of revenues, including fragile and conflict-affected states, often face the steepest challenges in collecting taxes. Donald Trump likes to declare that every good thing that happens while he's in office, job growth, rising stock prices, whatever, is the biggest, greatest, best ever. Then the fact-checkers weigh in and quickly determine that the claim is false. One thing is clear, however. One way or another, the bill would hurt most Americans. The only big winners would be the wealthy, especially those who mainly collect income from their assets rather than working for a living, plus tax lawyers and accountants, who would have a field day exploiting the many loopholes the legislation creates. The core of the bill is a huge redistribution of income from lower and middle-income families to corporations and business owners. Corporate tax rates go down sharply, while ordinary families are nickel and dimed by a series of tax changes, no one of which is that big a deal in itself, but which add up to significant tax increases on almost two-thirds of middle-class taxpayers. Meanwhile, the bill would partially repeal Obamacare in a way that would sharply reduce aid to lower-income families and raise the cost of insurance for many in the middle class. You might wonder how such a thing could possibly pass the Senate, but that's where the scamming comes in. $0.25 a week for your first year. While the underlying structure of the bill involves raising taxes on the middle class, the bill also includes a number of temporary tax breaks that would, at first, offset these tax increases. As a result, in the first few years, most middle-class families would see modest tax cuts. But the operative word here is temporary. All of these tax breaks either dwindle over time or are scheduled to expire at some point. By 2027, the bill is, as I said, a tax increase on the middle class used to pay for tax cuts that mainly benefit the wealthy. Why would anyone write a bill full of provisions that evaporate over time? There's no economic or policy logic behind it. Instead, it's all about trying to have it both ways, making a safe space for political double talk. Here's how it works. If you point out that the bill hugely favors the wealthy at the expense of ordinary families, Republicans will point to the next few years, when the class war nature of the plan is obscured by those temporary tax breaks, and claim that whatever the language of the law says, those tax breaks will actually be made permanent by later Congresses. But if you point out that the bill is fiscally irresponsible, they'll say that it only raises the deficit by $1.5 trillion over the next decade and doesn't raise deficits at all after that, because, you see, those tax breaks will expire by 2027, so the tax hikes will raise a lot of revenue. By the way, the claim that middle-class taxes will rise is crucial to passing the bill. Only bills that don't raise deficits after 10 years can bypass the filibuster and be enacted by a simple Senate majority. The point, of course, is that these claims can't both be true. Either this bill is a big tax hike on the middle class, or it's a huge budget buster. Which is it? Nobody really knows. Probably even the people who wrote this monstrosity don't know. But someone is being scammed bigly. Oh, and ignore claims that tax cuts for corporations would jumpstart the economy and paid for themselves. Of the 42 ideologically diverse economists surveyed by the University of Chicago on the impact of Republican tax plans, only one agreed that they would lead to substantial economic growth, while none disagreed with the proposition that they would substantially increase U.S. debt. So it's a giant scam. And while the exact nature of the scam may be unclear, ordinary American families would end up being the victims either way. For suppose those temporary tax breaks did end up becoming permanent, so that the budget deficit soared on a long-term basis. Then what? You know the answer. Republicans would suddenly revert to the pretense that they're deficit hawks and demand entitlement reform, that is, cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, programs that ordinary families depend on. In fact, they're already talking about those cuts. They've started the switch even before getting the suckers to take the bait. This is probably the greatest discovery I have ever made about money in my life. For years, I used to ask myself the question, where has all the money gone, in view of the global serious debt situation? I have since found out that there is no money, only figures on computers. When President Nixon canceled the direct convertibility of the United States dollar to gold, it opened up the door to print money without limits, and every other country has followed suit. Money is no longer money as we know it to be. It has become currency, as it has lost its value and continues to do so until it is replaced by something else, which sounds great on paper, but we will be the ones who lose yet again. So will they manage to pull off this giant con job? The reason they're rushing this to the Senate floor without a single hearing, without a full assessment from Congress's own official scorekeepers, is their hope that they can pass the thing before people figure out what they're up to. And the question is whether there are enough Republican senators with principles who believe that policies should not be sold with lies to stop this bum's rush. Organizations worldwide watch 5% of their annual revenue go right out the window due to a single cause: fraud. That is one of the findings reported in the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners' 2020 report to the nations, a global study on occupational fraud and abuse. Accounting fraud is defined as fraud that involves theft and other crimes committed by accountants or related to an organization's accounting methods and practices. Hartzell was behind one of the most enterprising frauds, referred to as the Sir Francis Drake estate fraud. The scam targeted people with the surname Drake. Ironically, he developed the idea from another scammer who attempted it on him. The scam was based around the estate of Sir Francis Drake, which was supposedly never paid out and in the hand of the British government. Hartzell began searching for people with the surname Drake in Iowa in 1919, informing them as a distant relative they potentially had a claim to Sir Drake's estate. He was allegedly preparing a lawsuit to force the British government to release the estate. He was asking for investment, where he promised returns of 500 to 1. Drakes fell about themselves to be a part of the scheme, so much so that the scheme was extended across other U.S. states. Hartzell moved to London to live in luxury in 1924 and hired salespeople to continue to get funds from other Drakes across the United States. He was eventually arrested and convicted of fraud in 1934. No one knows exactly how much he defrauded, but he continued to collect an additional $500,000 US whilst he was in prison. Let us know your opinion in the comment section below. This was all for today. Hope you liked the video. Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more interesting videos. Stay safe, and we will be back soon with another video.